There was a time when if you needed ice in most countries outside of winter, it had to be harvested from ice ponds, transported by horse or buggy to a central distribution point, and then distributed to your homes via an iceman carrying a huge chunk. It would go into an ice box and keep things cool for a little while. And that was the state of things for quite a while in the 19th century and into the 20th in some places. Nowadays, of course, many of us in the developed world have ice dispensers right in our refrigerators. And ice has become a commodity. It's free, it's cheap. You can generate just about as much ice as you want, anytime, anywhere. Um, so that got me thinking, might legal services go the way of ice delivery? And I invite you to go on this little thought experiment with me as we ponder that possibility. Um, there's two dimensions to, I think, this potential future. One is the technology, and the other is the human resources. As Audrey said, I think generative AI and other aspects of AI and legal tech these days has many strengths, but also many limitations. Given the rapidity of the current developments, I think it's realistic to expect continued progress along many different dimensions, so especially getting beyond the so-called stochastic parrot of regurgitating text from humanity's collections of texts and getting into true forms of reasoning. That seems inescapable as we combine um, symbolic AI with connectionist AI, so-called neuro symbolic combinations. I think it's also realistic to expect increasing emotional intelligence in our artificial tools, obviously even more conversational aspects to how they behave with us, beyond simply creating texts and answering questions. We can expect these systems to become more active agents, acting on our behalf to do things in relation to tribunals and counterparties, etc. They'll present themselves photorealistically as avatars, hard to distinguish from humans, and possibly result in a form of benevolent omniscience. I realize that last point is very debatable. On the human side, I think one trend we ought to be aware of, and that may play into the future, is the decreasing amount of work humans are doing that they will keep doing because machines can take over most forms of that work. So there could be a surplus of human helpers. Let's assume for the moment that in fact we could have such a surplus. Two quick quotes from my own writings. One is I've taken the position that our goal in relation to the so-called justice crisis, not only so-called but actual, is that our goal should be nothing less than the eradication of legal helplessness. Is that achievable? Can we actually eradicate the circumstances in which people find themselves totally without help in dealing with their legal circumstances? And one aspect of this is the need of combinations of resources. I make the point that transformational change is going to require new alliances of the born and the built, machines and people, lawyers and other forms of helpers, central and distributed resources, cognitive and emotional. We'll need a rainbow of disciplines and approaches. In the US, at the moment, one of the most exciting developments I've heard about is so-called frontline justice, which is a movement to expand the army of helpers, to go well beyond those that have graduated from law school and passed the bar, but other kinds of justice workers. So for the moment, let's consider what this promised land might look like. If we, in fact, we get to the point in 10, 20, 30 years where our technologies are knowledgeable enough to answer any question, do anything we may want to do legally, and there's an army of caring, helpful people who are available whenever you need them because they love to do meaningful work on behalf of people who need them. What if legal expertise and assistance, both machine-based and human-sourced, became, quote, too cheap to meter, unquote, an old phrase used in relation to electricity, etc. And everybody had access to them all the time. Would that be the end of the legal profession as we know it? Would it usher in a golden age of justice? So as I was pondering these questions, I got this strange email. I don't think it was intended for me because it's dated May 16th, 2035. And it says don't open until 2050. but it's an interesting window into the possible future from a law student. I'll read it quickly. Dear future friends, hello. If things go as planned, you're just opening this about 15 years after it was written. My assignment was to provide some color about the world of law way back in 2035. You'll be glad to know that 2050, Here We Come, is a current bestseller, written like the last one, purely by machine, unstained by human editors. It's still early, of course, but things have begun to change. Here are some highlights, and I'll have the rest of this email in the article I'm working on in connection with this talk. Just quickly to show you, there are a few really juicy bits in that piece. Talking about the UPL wars, they finally ended in 2031 when a narrowly divided U.S. Supreme Court decided 8-7, blah, blah, blah. I won't give you the punchline there. And states have begun enacting laws that establish a system user privilege akin to the lawyer-client and priest-penitent ones. Interesting possibilities. Maybe it'll actually happen. Let me just finish this email here. Cynthia Wonderstone, the writer, says, our grandest hopes haven't yet come true. People are still lazy, impulsive, and foolish. It won't be surprising if justice is still unevenly distributed in 2050, but I'm sure that will all have been worked out by the time you read this. So the question Cynthia left for me is, what will be left, both for the helpers and the helpees? On the helper side, I think it's clear there'll always be some work by humans to help those for whom machine assistance is inappropriate or ineffective. There'll be opportunities to act as an agent or a fiduciary to make judgments on behalf of those who can't make judgments themselves. And there'll be roles in supervising and training these increasingly proficient machines. But I want to focus more on the second category today, which is what's left for the helpees. And it's important to acknowledge that being helped is not an effortless job. If you want to do what needs to be done to resolve a legal issue or an opportunity, you as the person facing that opportunity or a problem need to provide a lot of information. That's effort about your circumstances, your goals, your preferences, your constraints. Somebody has to make choices. Unless we want to delegate our autonomy to machines, someone is going to be making determinations among options. And finally, anyone with a legal problem, most people have to deal with some fundamental socioeconomic realities like poverty, racism, sexism, ableism, all kinds of other societal diseases. And we can't make those go away by providing huge amounts of legal expertise and assistance for free. So going back quickly to the ice metaphor, even with an ice dispenser, you still need to decide whether to get ice, what to use it for, and whether to walk to the refrigerator is worth it. I don't want to trivialize the analogy with law, but I think this point is where I end up, which is even with complete knowledge and bottomless assistance, we're not ensuring just outcomes or optimal legal wellness. There are other factors we have to be aware of and take into account. That's kind of obvious, but I think those of us that are so enthusiastic about solving the justice problem by throwing more and more help at it need to realize there's a residual problem at the end. So in conclusion, I just suggest we pay more attention to the receiving side of legal assistance, even as we attack the unacceptable shortages on the giving side, on the provision of help. And I'll leave this for the audience and folks to think about later, but how can we do things that make a difference? How can we help people make best use of such help as they can get? And I think that fundamentally comes down to human-centered design.